Hello everybody and welcome to DC Central, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down and reviewing Arrow Season 7 Episode 19, otherwise entitled Spartan, and if you have not seen this episode, make sure you go and do so before proceeding with this review, as it will be filled with spoilers. So we found out the name for this title a little while ago, and when we found out the name was going to be Spartan, we all kind of assumed that this was obviously going to be a very Diggle focused episode, and a Diggle focused episode it is, both in the present day and also in the flash forwards, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And also we did find out we were going to be getting a very special guest star in this episode in the form of Ernie Hudson, who, if you don't know, is from the 80s movie Ghostbusters, and he was going to be playing the character known as General Stewart. And yeah, we have all these different elements coming together in this one episode, and it's pretty interesting to say the least. So I'll just talk about Ernie Hudson to start with. I thought he was great in this, like really good casting. Given the role he plays, which is revealed to be John Diggle's stepfather, I was predicting that he was actually going to be Diggle's father, but it turns out that it's actually Diggle's stepfather. I think he was perfect casting for this role, like absolute perfect casting. And I thought that he did a really good job. He had presence, he had mannerisms, and I actually believe that, you know, he actually raised Diggle, because he kind of did, like, he kind of raised Diggle, and I think, like, you really can see that in there. He also raised Andy as well, so you can kind of see that, and you can kind of see a lot of, you know, John's quirks in this character, and I think that Ernie Hudson did a really good job of portraying that. And before everyone starts with the whole Green Lantern, John Stewart thing, I mean, yes, there are references here and there to it, but I feel like, you know, this isn't as, like, Green Lantern setup as I think some people are going to want it to be. There's no confirmation of anything, there's nothing like that. There's a few little references here and there, like I know General Stewart, his name's Roy Stewart, I think he said his name was. He does do a reference to willpower in this episode when he's talking to John, which is obviously a Green Lantern reference there. But beyond that, there really isn't much outside of the Stewart name itself. So I feel like, you know, if you're going into this expecting Green Lantern stuff, you are going to be disappointed. So the main kind of story in this episode, I feel like it was kind of convoluted, to be honest with you. I feel like they had a bit too much going on, and I think this can also be applied to the flash forwards. Now, I'll get to the flash forwards at the end of the review, but as far as the present day storyline goes, it was kind of a bit difficult to keep up with, because you had all these different things going on where it was all connected, but it all wasn't really given the time to be explained properly, so it kind of came across as a bit convoluted to me. Including things where we had like this bioweapon being stolen, which was going to be combined with Archer, which was also stolen to find these targets who were working under General Stewart, and they were going to find this weapon, and the Ninth Circle were going to find it and use it for their own use. Like, they kind of had like these three different connective tissue points for this one story, but each of them weren't individually given the time to actually be explained and connected properly. So it kind of felt like every time the characters were talking about it and were like explaining it, it kind of felt like they were just kind of, sometimes you get this on the Flash where they just chuck a bunch of words at you so you don't really think about it too much, but because it's the Flash and they typically deal with, you know, science that doesn't actually make sense, they can kind of get away with it. But here with Arrow, given the fact this deals with grounded situations, I was listening to the dialogue trying to, you know, piece together what the story was, and I just couldn't quite get a grasp of it. I mean, I get the point, you know, obviously Ninth Circle are going to get a bioweapon, that's bad news. But other than that, like, how that actually all comes together and how it all happens with, like I say, with, you know, the agents that were undercover and the Archer program, it kind of came across as a bit messy for me. However, what we did get out of this was the reveals with Diggle and his stepfather, Roy Stewart. I did enjoy all these moments with Diggle, because Diggle's very, very agitated in this episode, and you kind of get to see that basically he was told by General Stewart that, you know, he led this group, you know, in the military into this op, and his father was actually responsible for basically saving everybody, and everyone got out except him, and his father died a hero. But then by the end of the episode, Oliver actually reveals to him that no, it was actually his father's negligence that got him killed, along with a couple of other soldiers, and the rest of that crew wouldn't have gotten out if it wasn't for General Stewart. And it kind of completely flips his opinion on General Stewart as a character, and they actually end on pretty good terms, which is interesting, because when they were casting this role, they did actually say that this character could potentially have room to come back in the future. So given the fact that they ended on good terms, we could actually see this character return at some point in Season 8. I doubt he's in the rest of the season, but he could be in Season 8 at some point for maybe an episode or two. And I definitely wouldn't mind seeing that, because like I said, I was a big fan of Ernie Hudson in this. I really liked him. So given the fact that him and Diggle have, ended on good terms, we could see a little bit more Diggle and Stuart going on in the future. So Felicity and Elena were also heavily working with Team Arrow in this episode to deal with this whole thing, because obviously it was very much connected to Archer. And Felicity actually has to destroy Archer in this. She basically creates a backdoor, shutdown, which she uses it when it kind of gets out of hand, and she shuts down Archer. So Archer's now gone, for now at least, but we kind of know where this is going, because Elena actually, before she self-destructed Archer, Elena copied all the code onto like another drive, and we know that Archer is around in the flash forward, so you have to imagine that Elena is somehow, whether it's malicious or not, is involved in Archer getting into the wrong hands once again in the form of Galaxy Wands. So it's definitely an interesting one, but I did enjoy actually having Felicity having to make that decision, and the fact she actually did it I thought was actually really clever, and I like that. I'm very surprised of the extent of a role that Elena had in this episode. Like, Elena's becoming kind of big in these past few episodes, and that surprises me, and it does worry me a little bit, because it's thinking, if we don't have Felicity next season, does that mean that we're going to have Elena instead? Because I don't know if I want that. Now, the flash forwards are pretty interesting this week, in my opinion. I didn't necessarily expect where they were going with this, but Connor actually goes into what is being called as the Deathstroke Gang to meet with JJ. Now, when they first said Deathstroke Gang, that took me by surprise by one thing. So there's a gang who are representative of Deathstroke. Now, let's just stick with the Deathstroke thing for now. That kind of annoys me a little bit, because Deathstroke, maybe Slade's going to return, next season, who knows. But as far as we know right now, Slade is probably never going to return to Arrow for the rest of this season. And for the rest of the show. So, if we just take that, Slade, the last time we saw him, Slade's not a bad guy anymore. He's no longer Deathstroke. Deathstroke was what he was in Season 2. He's not like that anymore, and he doesn't carry that mantle necessarily anymore. So the fact that there's this gang who are representative of Deathstroke, in air quotes, Deathstroke, I think is really, really strange, and kind of sad, actually. So like I say, unless Slade comes back next season and is a villain again, which I think is very unlikely, the fact that we have this Deathstroke gang, it feels kind of fan servicey to me. It feels like they just needed to have this gang, and they wanted to make it cool and relevant to Arrow, so let's call it the Deathstroke Gang. But it kind of goes against what we've seen of Slade, especially in Season 5 and Season 6. It just doesn't quite line up. And like I say, unless Slade becomes a villain at some point again in the future, it kind of felt disrespectful to me. And the bit that really confused me was where they said the leader was JJ. Because when they said JJ, I was like, do they mean John Diggle Jr.? Because that is ridiculous if it is. And it is John Diggle Jr. Connor says, oh yeah, JJ, that's my brother. So, because if you remember, when it was revealed that Connor Hawke was John Diggle's adopted son, I was saying on the podcast, I was saying on these videos, I was like, well, where's JJ? Because has he just gone off the grid? So it turns out JJ was a bit of a rebel, I guess, in the family, and to go against his parents and Connor, he joined the Deathstroke Gang. So, what connection does JJ have to Deathstroke? Because that's just really weird that he would go and join the Deathstroke Gang. Especially, is he aware of Deathstroke? Is he aware of what he did to Diggle? I know he didn't do anything particularly to Diggle directly, but, he still was a villain that Diggle had to fight. So, is he aware of everything? Or is he just completely going against it because JJ just doesn't care about Diggle? I think this Deathstroke Gang thing, it feels very fan servicey to me, and I don't think they've thought it through properly, and it kind of comes across like it's a bit, like I say, they're just doing it and they're just kind of forcing it, and we don't even see JJ in this episode, so it's just well, what's the point then? Why did you make it JJ? Unless we're not going to see him, if we do see him in the future, then fair enough, but if we don't, then what was the point of all that? And at the very end of this episode, we had Emiko killing Dante. In this episode, we do actually have Oliver telling Emiko of the truth about Dante, which him and Diggle found out in the last episode. And yeah, Emiko kills Dante. This was quite a satisfying kill, actually. It was nice to see Emiko actually do this, because Dante, he needed some revenge there on him, and Emiko gave it to him, so that was pretty nice. And it was interesting. I have to say, I didn't expect Dante to die this early on. I thought Dante was going to survive this season and go on to next season, and was still going to be, next season we were still going to be dealing with him and the Ninth Circle, but I guess not. So Dante is now dead, he's gone. So yeah, like I say, it kind of took me by surprise, because I was expecting Dante to live a lot longer than this, but it was nice to have Emiko actually get that revenge moment. So overall, a bit of a messy episode if I'm honest. I enjoyed it and I definitely liked it, but I feel like I say, that main storyline, it was an interesting idea, but I feel like in execution it came across very, very convoluted. I don't know if anybody else is feeling the same about that, but even when I've been watching other people's reviews of this episode, people have been struggling to explain like what the story actually was, and I think that's quite telling to kind of how overly complicated they made it. It just felt very, very, like I say, very messy to me. And then in regards to the flash forwards, like I say, it felt very fan servicey to me that they bring in this idea of the Deathstroke Gang and then making JJ a member, or maybe even the leader. They might have said it was the leader, I can't quite remember. They might have said he was the leader of it. It doesn't quite add up, so it feels like they just did all these things, and it feels like there was a bit too much going on in this episode for its own good. And just quickly, if you're wondering where my Supergirl review is, and also my Flash review, they might be a bit late. My Supergirl review is late simply because we just had the bank holiday weekend here in the UK, and I literally wasn't around yesterday I haven't even seen Supergirl yet as of recording this video. And Flash, I'm not going to be around for like the next couple of days, so that review is going to be a bit late as well. So if you're just wondering, that is why. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode of DC Central. If you enjoyed it, make sure you share this video with any other DC fans you think may enjoy this content, and I hope to see you guys again next time.